Good evening. My name's John with the Pine Tree. I have the great pleasure of being here with District 5 Supervisor candidate Darren Smellman.
Nice to see you again, John.
Good to see you, Darren. Hey, now we spoke a few months ago before the little debate we did, but then also when you were first getting the campaign started before the primaries, and we thought it'd be kind of a good thing as kind of we're just a few days before Election Day, as we're hitting down the home stretch, kind of your thoughts on the last, how things have developed the last few weeks, and if anything you wanted to say.
Sure. Yeah, I think things have gone very well here into the home stretch. A lot of positive feedback, and I guess if there might be a few things that I'd like to address if I could.
Sure.
You know,
yeah.
One of the, there's been a lot of positive things, but the one negative thing that I've heard a lot of is the Copperopolis Armory debacle.
Right, and that was kind of the reason for this, just to, because I think people, I think, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I just want to make sure, and I'm glad, thank you for this opportunity,
sure.
because I really want people to understand, from my perspective. I do come from an education background, and most of the people that I worked with in education don't share my same values in terms of their political philosophies.
Right.
So for me, being a fairly conservative person in a fairly liberal environment as an educator, I had to get along, and I was the minority opinion.
Right.
So I wasn't used to having my way or those type of things. So it gave me the ability to work with people that don't usually share the same perspective as I do on a lot of things, but we were able to come together because we knew that we were in it for the kids.
Okay.
So just drawing on common interests.
Yeah, because I think, to be candid, out of the stuff out of the wake of that little copper thing, it was like the perception was out there that you were just going to take your toys and go home. Is that?
Well, I've heard that. You're not the first one to believe it or not. I've heard that one, and by several people. But it was portrayed that some people said that I walked out.
Right.
Which is not true. I was the last person to leave when they turned the lights off and locked the doors.
Okay.
It wasn't that I didn't want to play, so to say, or whatever, or take my things and go home, or it's just that there's been an ongoing concern for people that they wanted to be able to ask honest questions and get honest answers, and I asked for a change in format is what I asked for, and I probably could have handled it a little better in my delivery, but the intent was to allow people what they wanted, which was to speak to the candidates openly and ask questions. So,
what were, say, a couple of those questions that people that you've been asked that you don't think that maybe they got a chance to ask? What were? Did you have a couple of what have people been talking about out there?
Well, in Copperopolis in specific, since we were at the Armory, there's been a lot of questions about the community plan and minutes, agendas, Brown Act violations, things like that. And so I know that there was people there that night that had questions they would have liked to have asked, and I wasn't certain that they were going to be able to ask those things, and I wanted them to be able to ask those things. So that was one of the ideas behind that.
What are some of those? Because that's kind of one of those not a soundbite question.
Right.
But on the plan, what were some of the issues that people had? What were some of the? What were those?
Well, the community plan was finished in 2005.
Okay.
And it was, it's never been adopted by the county, and here we are 5 years later. So, recently with the general plan update, people have looked at the plan, before submitting it for adoption, and there's a large discrepancy between what existed in 2005 and what currently exists. And so there was questions as, okay, when were these changes made, and who was there when they were made? Who was in attendance? What day did it happen? Was there public notice? So so some of those things, and I was trying to facilitate that. It's been my position from the beginning that I would be a man of the people. I would listen to people and help work through these things that people have issues with, without trying to hide things or.
Yeah. So I think, as we're getting down to the last few days, it's kind of as a summation, what would you like to say if somebody's getting ready to mark that ballot and either throw it in the mail tomorrow or punch on Tuesday? What would you say?
Well, I'd like to let them know that I'm not adverse to having questions asked. In fact, that's what I wanted. And you know, times when you have a situation like that where there might be a rule change, there needs to be compromise, in my opinion. It didn't have to be, you know, my way or the highway type of thing. And there actually was a lady who stood up in the back of the room during that brief 15 minutes or whatever it was, and she said, hey, you know, can Russ take questions from, you know, the basket, and Spellman could take them from the audience or something. But the moderator took the microphone away from me, wouldn't let me have it, unplugged it, and they wouldn't compromise. They just said it's over, there's no compromise. So in terms of that, I mean, you know, if I'm elected, or anybody that serves on the board or any kind of public entity like that, you need to be able to have some kind of compromise. You need to be able to work well with others. And I think that I've shown that I can do that, but I haven't had the opportunity as much as I would like to, due to circumstances. But you know, I hope that people would take away from this that the main issue for me is that, you know, people say that they want someone that's honest, someone that's open. They want, you know, you hear that transparency word a lot.
Right.
So I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to do that. And yeah, I don't want to say anything negative about my opponent, so I'll just leave it at that, I guess. From the beginning, like I said, I've said that I'll be a man of the people. You can look at my, you know, you look at newspaper articles that talk about the, you know, how my campaign was funded. It's been funded by you know, regular people who live in District 5, who I've listened to, and they gave me their hard-earned nickels and dimes, and I appreciate that very much. And because of that, I'm not beholden to anyone. You know, in terms of, you take large donations, those people want a return on their investment. I mean, it's just common sense that, you know, an average person wouldn't donate $5,000 to your account unless they expected something, whether it's said or not, or it's in writing, or those type of things. And being an average person, you know, this being my first foray into politics, I get that. I understand where people are coming from. I hear them. I understand, and that's how we've proceeded. And we've been out funded, or whatever you want to call it, out campaign funded. You know, 3-1. So hopefully we'll win. I think that we will, because people have said that that's what they want. They want honesty and open, and I feel positive about it. But I couldn't say for certain. I guess we'll find out.
Hey, thank you so much for meeting with us.
All right.
We appreciate
Thanks, John.
it.